Hi everyone, it's Jim here. We're taking a short break while we prepare the next season of the podcast, and so are using the opportunity to revisit some of our favourite interviews. This week is from Billy Walsh, the coach of the US boxing team. Billy is the kind of wise, calm coach who helps the people around him keep perspective and focus. I hope you enjoyed this a second time round as much as we did.
Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
To me, being perfect is not about that scoreboard out there.
This is a chance of a lifetime.
When you can understand the person, you can then work towards a common goal.
We are all on the same team.
Know your role and do it to the best of your ability.
Focus on the fundamentals. We've gone over time and time again.
Your defense has got to be better.
Leave no doubt tonight.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
My name is Paul Barnett, and you are listening to the Great Coaches Podcast, where we explore leadership through the lens of high-performance sport by interviewing great coaches to try and find ideas to help all of us lead our teams better. Our great coach on this episode is Billy Walsh, the head coach of the USA boxing team. Billy started boxing at age 7 in a Christian Brothers gym in Wexford, Ireland. He went on to win 7 Irish boxing titles, participated in European and World Championships, and represented his country as a welterweight in the 1988 Olympics. He then transitioned into coaching and was appointed Irish head coach in 2003. He was the head coach for 12 years, and from 2008 to 2014, the team won 7 Olympic medals, and at that point, it was 25% of all Olympic medals Ireland had ever won in any sport. In 2015 and again in 2016, he won the Amateur International Boxing Association's World Coach of the Year. In 2015, he was appointed head coach of USA Boxing and was charged with returning the program to its prior glory. So far this century, only one male and one female boxer has won gold at the Olympics. Despite the fact that American boxing is the most decorated program in Olympic history and has produced champions like Cassius Clay, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Leonard Spinks, and Oscar De La Hoya. Billy is a charismatic and wise coach, the type of person who doesn't shirk responsibility and with enough experience to keep life's ups and downs in perspective. The parts of our interview that I found most interesting were Billy's thoughts on working with a psychologist to improve his ability to block out background distractions that did not have any direct impact on his or the team's performance. How high performance is first figuring out what world class looks like by learning from the best, then using that to create an environment where athletes have the psychological, technical, physical and tactical tools they need to be their best. And building individual plans for each athlete with specific triggers to help them keep calm and focused during the bout. This was an insightful conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as Jim and I did.
We apologise for the audio interference that happens throughout parts of this interview.
The Great Coaches Podcast.
Billy Walsh, good evening and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure and an honour.
Billy, the honour is all mine, actually. I am so excited to talk to you about boxing. It's very close to my heart, as is Ireland, and we'll get into that later on. But could I ask you something really simple to start with? Where are you in the world today and what have you been up to?
I'm actually sitting in my sitting room in Wexford Town, a place called Corish Park, where I have been living since 1987. So I'm in my home place. I got home on Saturday, which is like 4 or 5 days ago. I had been with the USA team. We got out of COVID. Well, we didn't get out of COVID, but we got a chance to get out and to try and compete. So we went to Spain for a tournament, for the BoxAm tournament, and did pretty well. And then we stayed there for a week for a training camp. And then we went from there to Paris to their Institute of Sport for a training camp. And then from there to Nantes for a competition. And all the team went home last Saturday to America, and I came home to Ireland for a few weeks break. It's the first time I've been home in almost 10 months.
Billy, I'm amazed that you agreed to talk to us tonight, so I'm going to try my best to make it an interesting interview.
Okay. I'll try and help you if I can.
I want to start by winding the clock back a little bit, because when I was preparing for today, I was looking at some of the people you've had experience with, Mick Dowling, Nicholas Cruz from Cuba, and Zao Antia. And there's many, many other great coaches that you've had experience doing. We were just talking a minute ago about Jim Gavin and some of the great GAA coaches. But I want to just ask a really broad question to begin with. And what is it you think great coaches do differently from other people?
That's a very good question. On the Mick Dowling, it was a guy who I looked up to in boxing. I remember as a 14-year-old when I was going up to my first national championships, my coach introduced me to him, and I was like starstruck. He was the man at the moment and winning medals at European championships when Ireland weren't winning medals. Yeah, so Mick never actually coached me, but he was always there for advice as I became a senior boxer or an elite boxer, and we always had a good relationship. Yeah, Nicholas, I spent 5 years as his captain of the national team, who was a great guy who came to Ireland with no English. And I think the bad English that he has was the Wexford English that I taught him. and then Zao Antia was phenomenal find to become part of the team. Myself and Zor and Gary Keegan and all the backroom staff that came together to produce those successes for Ireland in 2008 and 2012. It was an unbelievable link to that team, and his skill and technique absolutely pushed the team towards where we needed to be. But what makes a good coach? I think there's many, many hats you got to wear to become a good coach. And I think for all those guys that I known was, their personality, being able to relate to people and get on with them. And also then you have to have the background, the tactical awareness of your sport. And sometimes, being a good relationship builder, I think, and then having respect of your players, your athletes, is a key part of any coaching setup.
Billy, you started boxing, if my research is right, you started boxing as a 7-year-old at the Christian Brothers Gym in Wexford. And then you went on to represent Ireland at the 1988 Olympics, and along the way winning 7 Irish senior titles. But when was it on that journey that you realised you wanted to be a coach?
I was fortunate enough to play quite a few sports Gaelic games, in particular hurling and football and soccer. I made a choice probably at 18 to leave those other sports because I wanted to go to the Olympic Games. And I never saw myself out of boxing. So it was never a piece where I'm going to retire and then I'm going to give it up. I always felt I would be some part of my club or to help out in some way, because I really enjoyed it. In my early 20s, mid-20s, I felt I was coaching at that time, coaching some of the other athletes, so the newcomers onto the national team. I was helping them along the way. So it just seemed a natural progression for me. And as soon as I retired from boxing, I went straight back to the gym to become a coach, just to help out the club. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would turn it into my profession. I thought I was going to help out as an amateur in my club 3 nights a week and a Sunday morning, which ended up every night of the week and a Sunday morning. But yeah, and I never really thought until maybe 2001, the opportunity came to assist Nicholas Cruz actually it was 1999 for the Sydney Games. I became assistant coach to Nicholas for that period of time. Working for myself, it was difficult to take time off and to get away because there was no finance for it. So it was difficult to pay people to work for you and leave a wife at home with 3 young kids. It was difficult, but I loved it that much, and I was honoured to do that. And then eventually, in 2003, the position came up for head coach in Ireland, and I was fortunate enough to be selected by Gary Keegan to take that role.
I want to talk to you about Gary Keegan and why he selected you, but you just said that you loved it so much. Could I ask, what is it you love about it so much?
I don't know. And so, for some of the heartbreak that I've had, I probably shouldn't love it that much, I've had more losses than I've had wins, and I don't know what it gave to me. I don't know. Obviously, from my life as a 7-year-old, has given me a lot of confidence, self-belief, discipline, structure, all of those things that you need. And And it's just the excitement of the game, the challenge of getting into the ring, and one guy is like, he's actually going to try and beat you. He's not going to score a goal or a point on you. He's actually going to try and break your head off, right? And that piece, the combative piece, intrigued me, and the adrenaline that came with that, you know. So for me, that was, the buzz of that really excited me. And then to be the best, you know, for me was trying to be the best and working in circumstances which didn't probably lend to that, as regards working in a job, getting up at 6 a.m. to go for a run, going to work all day, coming to the gym at night time, no sports science and medicine around you, no nutrition, you know. So in hindsight, all of that stuff, you know, if you had all that stuff, maybe things may have been different. But that desire, that drive to be the best, to be an Olympian, and obviously become an Olympic medalist, which never happened, but I tried often enough.
You may not have been an Olympic medalist, but there was 7 Irish championships along the way. So that was some consolation, I guess.
Yeah, look at every year to become a national champion. I won my first title when I was 14, and every year after that, for 12 years, I was champion, which was great. In the elite, I fought in 10 finals in a row, and got beaten in 3 and won 7 of them, which was, it was great. It was fantastic. It was, you know, obviously the start of, if you're not national champion, you weren't going to be on the national team. So it was important to win those.
Billy, the success in Irish boxing is just amazing. You know, when you started as head coach of Irish boxing, the team had qualified just 1 boxer for the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. But in the 12 years following, you win 7 Olympic medals, many, many European titles and world championships. And those 7 medals represented at the time 25% of all Olympic medals Ireland had ever won.
Yeah.
I'm really curious. What did you do? What did you do when you took over that fueled this result?
Well, I think, you know, first of all, as I said, Gary Keegan was the director. I came in as a head. He hired an imposter. He hired me as head coach, but I wasn't a head coach when he hired me. I think eventually somewhere along the line I became one, but we all learned and grew together. It was a fantastic group of people that Gary put together. Everybody was eager to learn. They had this growth mindset. We were challenging ourselves, come up with a system, you know, and then people forget when we started, we had success early. You know, we started off going to these, setting targets for ourselves, going to these multi-nation tournaments of winning bronze medals. And we started to achieve that pretty quick. And then the team said, like, this is not, like, we started setting our targets then for gold and silver. So we kept raising the bar. And then we started to achieve that. But you're talking about Sydney, but the games after it, which was Athens, where we were in place for 10 months previous to it, we only had 1 boxer qualified again, which was Andy Lee. And, you know, our heads were called for, you know, in the first year. We had gone to the World Championships in Chicago in 2007, and we qualified 1 boxer, which was Paddy Barnes. You know, so our heads were being called for on a few occasions. And, you know, I think we always knew that it was the talent was in Ireland. I happened to be part of a team, a very talented team when I was boxing over those 10 years. But, you know, we had no system. We had no structure. We were all in our clubs going to train together a couple of weeks before we went to a major championship. You know, all the other top teams in the world were full-time athletes. You know, if we were going to compete at that level, we needed at least train at that level. And then, of course, it was changing the mindset, you know, from being happy to be an Irish champion to now look towards becoming a European or a world champion. And so that was a big change, changing the mindset. You know, as I said to you earlier, guys were getting on the national team, being national champion, and that was it for the year. You couldn't get them off it. You know, we brought in a system where that, you know, whoever's performing, we'd have the 2 and 3 in the gym with you, and whoever's performing the better, we would select them for tournaments. And we're looking for the best international boxer, and we're not the best national. So that's how we started. At the very beginning, there were some issues that we, you know, half the team didn't make it through the first year. Either couldn't stick to the intensity or couldn't stick to the discipline and the structure that we put around the team. But it was amazing to see that grow over that period. Well, I was there 12, 13 years. for that period of time. It was amazing to see where I had gone to, and to actually sit back sometimes. You sit back and look at the system operate without you being actually in it, just taking a stroll around to see everybody doing their job, all the support staff working like clockwork. Everything was down to a T. And at the end of the day, it's up to the athlete then to perform. For us, we were creating the right environment for those athletes to give their best performance.
I read a quote where you say, people ask you, they say, Billy, what happened? And you say, high performance happened. What is high performance in a boxing sense?
I think first of all, it's figuring out what does world class look like. What does good look like? If you got a template or a vision in your head, what good looks like for a high performance boxer, but then you can obviously map out what needs to be done to get him to that place. And then we went, I won't be too hard, but we traveled to some of the worst places in the world to have a look at what the best in the world were doing. And, we stole stuff from everybody, and we came back and put it together in an Irish context, what would suit our culture. I remember going to Moscow, a place called Chekhova, which is their training camp. It's about an hour outside Moscow. And at the time we were testing, we actually became a bit anal about testing. We were testing everything. Our guys were on the jump mats, getting their vertical jump. We had their heart rate monitors on them when they were in the ring sparring, seeing what intensities they were getting up to. And the Russians were intrigued with this. And obviously there was a language barrier, but Tsar, who spoke Russian, was great that we had him, because our connections, we never would have got in there if only for him. So we said to him, look, okay, if you're interested, what we'll do is we'll wire up two of your boys tomorrow. We put them on the jump mat. One of them ended up being twice Olympic gold medalist, and the other one was world champion and Olympic gold medalist. So we wired up. I said, we'll give you the data. So we gave him all the data. But we came back with their data of a guy who was twice Olympic gold medalist. So it was a little bit of Irish espionage. It was done. They didn't realize that we were pulling one over on them. But anyway, we got away with that. So we were getting data from people, what the best in the world were doing, and then able to set our intensities and our styles. And then, you can't beat international training partners. Whereas having your number 2 or number 3 pushing it isn't good enough, because they're not going to get up to that. They're not going to get up to the level or the intensities that someone that you're going to meet in the competition are going to get. So, yeah, we learned a hell of a lot along the way. But if that in some way explains some of it, I think then, as I said earlier, is creating that environment where the athletes can perform to their best, giving them all the tools psychologically, physically, technically, tactically, giving them all the tools so they can perform and all the instructions that they can do so. That's been probably what high performance is in any sport.
Your Irish program had a good mental skills component that focused on helping people adapt in stressful situations. And I'm really interested to know, how has this helped you when you've been a coach in stressful situations?
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with our psychologist the other day in a fun way, but Jerry Hussey was our psychologist. And I was saying to him, you know what? I said, you did more work with me than you actually did with the team. Because I probably needed more help than anybody else. And I think from what the guys were learning, as around their own mental health, and not only their mental health, but their performance, I was learning as well of simple things like staying in the moment, and learning to control the controllables, all of that sort of stuff, which is key to me because, unfortunately, in your position as a head coach, there's always things going on around the background that may affect what's happening. And unless they had, a direct impact on improving our performance, I was able to manage it and keep it away from the team and to allow them to perform. And without having, those strong mental health and tips, I think I wouldn't have been able to do so.
Billy, when you collected your first Boxing Coach of the Year award, because there's, of course, been 2, you said, I want to dedicate this award to a man that taught me everything, my late father, Liam Walsh. I'd like to ask you, if it's not too personal, what elements from your late father are evident today in your coaching style and philosophy?
Yeah, I actually mentioned two people on that. I was very emotional because my dad wasn't too long had passed, and my coach, Eddie Byrne, who I grew up in the same street as him, was my coach. I really dedicated to both of them because he coached me since my dad never coached me in boxing. He coached me in life. He never coached me in boxing. He was a GEA player. Yeah, so that was both of them I dedicated it to. My dad, just his view on life, obviously he was, a good disciplinarian, but he was a funny man. And he lived life, and this is what you see with me every day. I live life through a lens of having fun and enjoying every moment. So I enjoy every moment today. I always look, I'll always find a funny thing in everything that we do every day, and even in training. And I always find with boxing, because it's such a tough sport, and as mentally it can be very draining and very tough. But let's have as much fun as we can until we have to get really serious. And so that's where I really like enjoying what I do, and I think that comes from my late father, Liam.
I want to talk about tough, actually, because in 2013 you were reflecting on the success of the Irish team, and you said, and I'm going to quote this back to you if it's okay, you said, "Our identity was crucial. How we look, how we talk, how we behave, everything was intended to make us seem like warriors and winners before we entered the ring." And so I wanted to ask you about what I imagine is that very tough walk to the ring, and whether there was any routines or methods that you used to just help people stay calm and focused in that moment.
Well, a lot of the time, or most of the time, I would say all of the time, all of those guys had visualized that walk to the ring. I've had them lie flat on the ground after training sessions, and we talk about being in the dressing room. And I get them to visualize the warm-up. I get to visualize the walk into the ring, the crowd, the expectation, all of that, what we're going to manage. So that was, after many, many training sessions, that was what I was planning and what we talked about. They all visualize that. And on the way out, each of them, I would be, whatever their triggers are, I was speaking to them, whatever their individual needs were at that, as we felt at the time. Having a conversation with Kenny Egan, I'm telling him corny jokes. Ray Moylett, the same thing. Ray said to me, "Tell me a joke. Tell me that joke. Tell me the joke." He said, "When I get to the ringside." Okay, so the joke was, you hear about the two mice that lived in the tire. He said they got a puncture. Now they live in a flat, right? So. And he used to break his heart laughing. It was the most stupidest joke in the world. But I had to tell him that every time he got to the ringside. And that was his trigger to go to work. So there were some funny things he had to do. But it was individually tailored towards each boxer as we went to the ring. And then, as I said to you, all of them, I would lie them down. We'd go through visualization, being at the Olympic Games, the crowd, the lights, the cameras, all of that stuff. So to get their heart rate up, they could visualize what it was going to be like. So then when it happened, they knew what to expect. And we did a brilliant thing. Jerry Hussey did a brilliant thing in London. When we walked out in London, the noise of the crowd was unbelievable, right? We were taken aback. We're behind the curtain, and in the red corner, John Nevin, right? And they opened the curtain and the whole place went ballistic, right? We couldn't believe it. And he got into the ring, and for the first round and a half, his head was in the audience. He was looking out to the crowd. He was fought a guy from Denmark who he should be, but the fight was, your man was level after the first round. I'm tuning him in the corner. I said, "What the hell are you doing? Get your head back in the ring here." So Jerry recorded it, got all the team together that night, and we played it. And we showed them that, let's keep our focus. When we go in there, this crowd is going to distract you because the noise was phenomenal. And there was a massive big crowd there. Just to keep that, as I say, walk to the ring, to keep them in focus for what their task was ahead.
So you leave Ireland, Billy. Let's move on. Let's get to the USA. You get over there. I don't want to really go into the reasons why you left Ireland and went to the USA. I think that's been reported enough. So you get to the USA, you look around, and your first comment is, where is Team USA? There's a brand, but there's no team. They trained all over the place. They had their own coaches. The whole thing was quite disorganized. And so I'm really intrigued to know, what were the first things you did to pull that team together?
Well, the first thing really, you set out your stall, and said to them, here's where the vision is, for this team. We want to be Team USA, right? There's no I in team. All of that cliches. I went through all of those. I said, we're here to be a team. I know we want to be one of the best teams in this games. And brought them all together. We're training at this time, and we're training at this time. And if everybody is not here 15 minutes beforehand, you're late, right? So we started that off. We had a couple fell by the wayside, and we've had a serious talk after maybe a month or two with a couple of the athletes, Clarissa Shields, which is probably well documented, and Shakur Stevenson. So, and then eventually they got the message, and we started to train together as a team and started to work together as a team. And said, you can't do this on your own. And all of them coming from probably professional gyms where it's all professional boxing orientated, which is very much singular and on your own. But my belief was we're a team, and without every part of this team, you're not going to achieve the goal that you want to achieve if we're not all working together. So that's been a big piece of building that Team USA brand again. And giving them the sight of, or the vision of Olympic Games, because USA Boxing had gone away from most of them were working on becoming a world professional champion. Instead of using the Olympic Games as a learning curve and also a platform to launch their professional career. So I was selling that to them. You're going to fight the toughest guys from all over the world. Anyone that represents your country is the best in that country. And, it's not like you're going to have to pick a bum month as a pro. You're going to fight the best from that, and you're going to be tested every time you go out, and you're going to be in the hostile environments all over the world. And that'll stand you in good stead as you go out to become a professional. There's nothing should faze you after that. So that was my main focus at that time. The biggest problem was nobody could understand my Wexford accent. I'd line them all up and I say, you all get that? And they all go, and I go, I thought we were supposed to speak English, right? Do we not speak the same language? Come on. So I had to learn to slow down a bit and explain myself a little bit better. But anyway.
Billy, I've never boxed. I'm a huge fan, obviously, but I've never boxed. And what I don't understand is, why is a team ethos so important when ultimately it's a single individual that stands in the ring and has to deal with the opponent that's in front of them?
And again, as I said to you, it's very difficult to do it on your own. You need a team around you. You need a team to work with. You need sparring partners. And also, for me, obviously I was with Ireland for 10 years. As I said, 5 of those I was captain. And we had a great team bond. And some of those guys that are on that team are still my best mates. And it's something that I've always cherished, having that teammate to be able to bounce things off of, that are going through the same emotions that you're going through. Some difficulties, someone that you can chat with to help you get your best performance. And as I said to you, it is Team USA. We're going to go under the same banner, the same flag, and when all the victories are counted and all the losses are counted, our team will then be recognized at whatever level they're going to be at in that tournament. So everybody within that team, by winning a fight or winning 2 fights or winning 5 fights, adds to the score of the team as we strive to be one of the best teams in the world.
You talked about the Wexford accent a minute ago and you were joking, but what I'd love to know as an interested bystander is when they're in the heat of battle and the bell rings and it's the end of the round and the boxer comes back to the corner, how do you structure your communication so that it's simple and easy enough to follow so that the boxer can understand it and take action on it?
Yeah, and it's really very, very simple. There's one or two things that they need to do. They don't need to overcomplicate it. You let them calm down, try and bring their heart rate down first. And then we get to the pitch of where we're going, what needs to be done. There's one, maybe two things. That's maximum. I keep it very clear. Then I ask for feedback. You understand what I'm saying? What are we to do? Get them to repeat it, and then give them some water, get them back into the ring. So it's pretty simple. It's pretty direct. As we see what's happening in the fight in front of us, we're trying to judge the fight as well as what way the judges are seeing it, which is sometimes very, very difficult because it's hard to believe sometimes what they're saying. But yeah, so we're trying to give, are we winning? Are we losing? What do we need to do this round? And in amateur boxing, you got those 3 rounds, right? And it's so fast, right? And the intensity is so high. And there's a well-known fact out there, 80% of the guys that win the first round win the contest in amateur boxing. So if we're not on the ball from the first round, and then you got to maintain it for the second round, because if you lose, then you're all down to the last round, So it is a high tense and a high tension sport for those 3 rounds. As I say, it's a 9-minute sprint. So we tested our guys. They're up in their heart rate is from when the bell goes to the last round for 9 minutes. It was 93, between 93 and 100% max for the full duration of the 9 minutes. So that is a 9-minute sprint. So you're sprinting for 9 minutes. So that's pretty high, and you got to have pretty good engine to work at that intensity.
I love this quote from you, Billy. You say, you teach one boxer, you teach one boxer. You teach one coach, you teach 100 boxers. And I'm sorry to keep reading quotes back to you, but this is this one that quite resonated with me. And I wanted to ask, how are you trying to change the situation in America by this education program that you're helping to put in place?
Yeah, so that was, you look at when I got here, I'm trying to look at, I'm not sure how long I was going to be here. But I'm looking at doing my best job that I can do for USA Boxing. And what will your legacy be? So I wanted to leave some legacy whenever the day comes that I leave, if I ever do, right? And for me, and we had similar situations in Ireland, and there's no one perfect, no system perfect, but we're coming in, and some of the guys, they didn't have the basic fundamentals. And when they become adult, it is very difficult if they're being taught wrongly or improperly at an early age. It's very hard to change that if they've been doing it for so long. So that's where my focus went. We got Chad Weigel became our coaching coordinator and has done a really good job of pulling together all the pieces. We sat together and pulled together the 4 different levels of coaching. Coaching had not been touched in the USA since 1984, when there were kingpins of the world. And unfortunately, it had then gone on a decline after the 80s. So we've now got a system up and running. It's only up and running. We're on to the silver level. We got a green level, which was to get into it. Then you got a bronze level. Then you got a silver level. And you're going to have a gold level. And we're on to the silver level at this stage. So what I'm hoping to come out of that then, obviously, the next generation of kids will have the sound fundamentals for Olympic-style boxing, where they're not so much focused on professional boxing.
And it's an amazing legacy, isn't it? Spinks, Cassius Clay, De La Hoya, the list goes, George Foreman, the list just goes on, and Joe Frazier, the list goes on.
Roy Jones, you got, yeah. There's got so many of their world professional champions that became stars all came through their Olympic program.
Mike Tyson, the other one. Yeah.
Mike Tyson was on it. He didn't make the team.
That's right, yeah.
He didn't make the Olympic team. He got beat when he was 17 or 18 at the time. But yeah, so, and that's where we'd like to be with the team. We do, we understand that they're going to go on to the professional ranks, but we like to keep them for at least an Olympic cycle, and then obviously then become a good alumni of USA Boxing, and we send them off for good wishes and goodwill, and we can help them whatever way we can. And at the moment, we've been bringing some of the guys that have been in the program that are now professional. We've brought those back in for sparring and stuff, and they work with it within the squad and help the squad, which was a different attitude before I was there.
Billy, I didn't want to go into this interview by talking about all the great boxers you've coached, because I think that would be unfair to get you to compare them. But there is 2 boxers that you've been involved with that they've captured the imagination, I think, of people all around the world. And I'm talking about Katie Taylor of Ireland and Clarissa Shields of the USA. And they're amazing athletes. They're amazing representatives of their sport, and they're great role models. But I wanted to ask you, as their coach, do you have a different way of coaching these super elite boxers that is different from everybody else?
Not really. I think the same principles apply. Discipline, structure. Obviously each individual have their own things that we need to work on. But in general, they're part of the team. They train with the team. They work out with the team. They help the team. They come and shout for their teammates. They do all the same things that all the rest of the team would do as part of Team USA. That's what is expected of them. And yes, in different times, you'll have different communications with them because of maybe where they're at on their level. But other than that, there's nobody bigger than the team, and they will be treated equally. And, I have to say, both of them are two legends in the game at this stage in female boxing. And Katie was probably the torch carrier for many, many years for women boxing. And she's an absolute legend in her stature and obviously not only with her boxing skills, but as a person. And, Clarissa, then again, I never seen anybody that was ever going to beat her. She never believed anyone was going to beat her. And maybe hopefully that'll be the case till she finishes her career.
Billy, you've been really generous with your time. I don't want to hold you up much longer, but I do want to ask you one last question if I could. And it's another quote, actually, because I was preparing for today and I found this great quote from Michaela Mayer, who's now turned professional, and I know she's left your program. But she said, when she was talking about you, she said, quote, "There's just something about him, the way he talks to you, that demands your respect. You want to impress him. You want to make him proud." Which leads me to ask, Billy, what's the legacy that you want to leave as a coach?
Well, that's a difficult question. I haven't thought that far ahead, but I don't know. Actually, Michaela lives in Colorado Springs, and she moved there, and she comes in and trains with us when we have camps to help out the next generation. What my legacy would be, I think, is just the fact that I've left the place in a better state than I found it. I left, or put USA boxing back on track to be one of the best nations in the world in amateur boxing, which I always felt it should be. So really, that'll be my legacy, that I left the place in a better place than I found it.
Billy, I want to thank you so much for your time tonight. It's just such a special experience for me to chat with you. As a proud Irish passport holder, I'm always happy to talk to Irish coaches because it makes my mum proud. So thank you very much for your time tonight. It's been great chatting.
Paul, it's been a pleasure, Paul. Thank you.
The Great Coaches Podcast.
Hi everyone, it's Jim here. You've been listening to our discussion with boxing's Billy Walsh. The key highlights for me were how, even though boxing is an individual sport, you need a team around you to help you spar and train, and that this team helps you work through the motions and emotions you have as a boxer, and that, as a coach, your role is to set up the environment where people understand the vision and then adjust their mindset so that they are not satisfied with present performance. I hope you enjoyed it as much as Paul and I did. Coming up next on the Great Coaches Podcast, we'll be speaking to the head coach of Netball South Africa, Dorette Badenhurst.
Yeah, I grew up in a home where family is very important. So my dad is a person that he's for people. He just loves to be between people. He loves his sport. He loves his coaching. And from a very young age, I coached tennis with him. And he was a coach that actually started helping the beginners. And when they were at a certain stage, he will send them to better coaches or coaches that will work with the more experienced players. And for some reason, my dad always gave me the beginner players. And I just enjoyed seeing the change that you can make in that player from a very, very young age. And my dad was just that motivation for me. And sometimes you think, no, I'm too busy at school, I'm too busy with this. And he will say, if you start something, you will finish in that. And I've always learned from my dad that with sport, your name is so important. You can't, if you do something and that is bad against your name, that will go forever with you.
And just before we go, coaches are not usually the type of people who seek the spotlight. And so if you can put us in contact with a great coach that you know has a unique story to share, we would love to hear from you. You can contact us using the details in the show notes.